when I say to friends who are not cinephiles, "Oh, I made a family film," I know that like 30% of their brain is worrying that it's going to be people sitting around a kitchen table talking about their problems. And that's not what I want to make at all.
Hey, I'm Ben Mankiewicz, host of Talking Pictures, a movie memories podcast from Turner Classic Movies and HBO Max. Today we are continuing our mini Oscar nominee season with Norwegian filmmaker Joachim Trier. His film, Sentimental Value, is up for 9 Academy Awards. Joachim has 2 nominations himself, one for Best Director and another for Best Original Screenplay, along with his frequent co-writer Eskil Vogt. There's a cute video going around online on the morning of the Oscar nominations announcement of Joachim with his team in Oslo and Stellan Skarsgård responding to the nominations as they came in.
For achievement in directing, the nominees are Joachim Trier, Sentimental Value.
I like how at the end of the video, when they get to the last category, the crowd there in Oslo is almost sedate when the announcement comes, as if they were thinking, we already got 8 nominations. Of course we're getting Best Picture. Joachim Trier has made 6 feature films thus far. He comes from a movie-making family. He is a serious cinephile. His tastes, though, really run the spectrum from Hollywood action movies to Tarkovsky. When it comes to his own movies, he's interested in how we, as human beings, relate to each other and to our inner lives. Even Joachim acknowledges that sounds potentially dull, but his movies are neither sober nor static. They are riveting. There were times I was on the edge of my seat with Sentimental Value, and barely anything happens. Story revolves around a couple of grown sisters who are quite close and their relationship with their estranged father. That's Stellan Skarsgård. He plays a celebrated movie director who wants his older daughter, Nora, a theater actress, to play the lead in his new movie, his first in 15 years. She refuses, though, to even read the script. But then an American actress, played by Elle Fanning, signs on for the role. In this scene, the actress Elle Fanning plays is talking with Nora, played by Renate Reinsve.
Why didn't you want to do the role?
I can't work with him.
Why?
We can't really talk.
But he wanted you to do it.
All 4 of the main actors in Sentimental Value, Renate Reinsve, Stellan Skarsgård, Elle Fanning, and the sister, Inga Ibsdottir Lillians, got Oscar nominations for their performances. Movie is also up for Best International Feature and Best Editing. Here is my conversation with Joachim Trier. Joachim Trier, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, man. And I'm a big fan of the show, to be quite honest about it. So I'm excited that you want to talk to me.
Yeah, well, we want to talk about some of the movies that show up on TCM and and some of the movies that really movies that matter to you. And I'm sure there's some crossover there. But first, I want to talk a little bit. We hope we'll get back to it throughout the conversation, I hope. But I want to talk a little bit about your 6th feature film, Sentimental Value. I don't know that I've had a movie affect me emotionally like that in, let's just say, years. That's a safe answer. I was totally blown away by this movie, with coming in with basically 0 expectations.
Well, thank you, Ben. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I sense, since I've heard you talk about it, I know you're proud of it.
I am, and I'm very proud that it's a 6th film where I'm still working with a lot of the same collaborators I've done for all of them. The same co-writer, Eskil Vogt, same editor, Olivier Bugekote, sound designer, Gisle Tveito, and now also Anders Danielsen Lee, 4th collaboration, and Renate Reinsve, 3rd. So, I'm from a film family background, and the film is about a film family, literally. So, yeah, no, it's a personal one. So I appreciate you feeling it, man. Thank you.
I also don't think there's ever been a movie that made me want to smoke cigarettes more.
That's a big compliment because smoking is something I've never done in my life, but something that I love in movies.
But I like that. I just your guys aren't. You're not so worried about it. Like you're not panicked about it.
No, I guess uh, I think and we'll get into that, I'm sure, but I'm kind of I'm interested in human experiences, humanist cinema, in lack of a less pretentious term, stories about the imperfections and trying to understand each other rather than to make a villain and a good guy. So smoking, maybe we could start as a metaphor of the imperfections of human life. That's I'm curious about that. That characters aren't perfect.
I didn't even think about the imperfection part. That we're all a little bit broken. But this will allow me to get into one question about how you direct films. And if people haven't seen your movies, they really ought to. It will be an incredibly satisfying experience to go through your filmography. But there's one scene with Stellan Skarsgård and Renata Reinsve, who is as good an actor as I've ever seen in my life, and Stellan too. Together. Anyway, there's one scene with them. They're father and daughter. He's a filmmaker. She's an actor, mostly theatrical, um, and but their relationship is broken. They do not know how to communicate. And there's one scene in the film where they're outside smoking. Um, I don't think they say a word. There's
They
not a
don't.
word of dialogue, but yet
No.
yet that scene and that communication seems rich.
No, thank you. No, I love those two. I love all my actors, but I think it's such a joy to have those two in front of a camera, and they're playing such a complicated relationship. Nora, the older daughter, who is so much like her father, but never felt that she had him being present in her life with all the animosity and the yearning for love and all that. And then in the middle of the film, exactly, we want to place this one moment of hope that they are at her younger sister's birthday for her 9-year-old son. She's living a more bourgeois, more conventional, and probably a happy life. But suddenly there's a bonding between the two black sheeps of the family, the difficult father and the older sister with her workaholic artistic lifestyle, and they can just look at each other and kind of laugh at it all and have a cigarette. And I thought we did actually write a joke in there, Eskil Vogt, my co-writer, and I, about him saying that he felt that the mother-in-law was kind of hitting on him, and Renata saying, no, 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 don't go there, dad, and stuff. But it was more valuable to us to just to stick with the silences. And
But that's a moment that tells you, no matter how broken it is, some part of both of them want it to be different, and that is, as you said, that's enough to count as hope at the stage they're in. I'm gonna bounce around here because I was going to get to this later, but there's really three main characters in that. Renata and Stellan as the daughter and I guess the older daughter and the father, and then the other daughter. And I mean, I don't even want to try her last name, but Inga, right?
yeah,
I'm going to try Ib's daughter, Lilias.
perfect, Lilos, yeah.
So I heard from because I came and watched a Q&A at the Arrow in Los Angeles in Santa Monica that you did, and the man. So she's as important as the other two, and she, as you said, has led the more bourgeois life. She has a relationship with the father that she hasn't really told her sister about, and they both are angry. But the other daughter has forged some relationship. She helps him research his movies, but the way that you and Eskil had written the character, she just played it differently without even any discussion about it. Just did you realized as you were watching, this is not what we imagined. She's saying the same lines, but she is more self-assured, and you realize that was better, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the wonderful thing about working with Eskil, the co-writer. He's never gets precious about it. And I think that for me, being a director is live. It's here and now in every moment. And if you miss a beat, you miss the best opportunity of the film to be what it could be. So we wrote the younger sister, Agnes, to be more longing for resolve family situations. He's the one that wants to make everyone feel good. And we wrote her more avoiding through humor and sweetly trying to, make everyone happy. And then we meet Inga, who's a fantastic actor and a new collaborator in terms of, I hadn't worked with her before. and we had casting sessions, so hundreds of people in Oslo, lots of great actors in that generation. But she came in with an earnestness and a groundedness, and suddenly I realized, oh, that could be that dynamic, that the kind of bohemian older sister has a contrast in the younger sister being more grounded, silent, and honest. And that truthfulness is actually Inga as a person as well. I keep saying this and people don't believe me. There wasn't a false note in any of our takes. She's kind of like, yeah, some takes were more interesting than others, and we did a lot of variations, as I love. Again, the live aspect of directing, the there and thenness is the magic that that where the camera can capture something, right? So, but she really has this honesty to her, and I know she was a gift. I mean, and again, as you say, the process changed because of her, and letting people affect your material is the best thing in my experience.
Yeah, there's not a, I mean, there's not a false note from anybody, but she's got less showy work to do, and fewer close-ups, and she's amazing, and she is, I mean, she really, she's the glue of that family,
She is.
and that makes her sort of the glue of the movie that allows these other characters to be as compelling as they are. So I was really struck by her, but I was struck by everybody. So when yeah, obviously, working at TCM, we show a lot of silent films, and there's among cinephiles, and I love cinephiles. I am one, but I'm not a scholar, but there's a way of talking about the silent era as as pure cinema, and I've never identified silent films in that way because I think movies got infinitely better when people could talk to each other. And I don't care how you guys make a movie look, and I'm unlikely to notice your color scheme, or I don't care about any of that. I even don't like it. I don't like symbolism. I like talking. And yet here in your movies, and particularly in Sentimental Value, man, what is not said, those moments in between conversations and your willingness to let those play out and cut back and forth from close up to close up to close up feels so authentic and so real, and you're aching for somebody to speak, but you're actually afraid of what they might say. It's almost a relief that they don't speak. So that's true of all your movies. You're very comfortable with silence.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. And listen, since we're talking to cinephiles and I've been listening to your podcast, I'm going to go out on a limb for a second and try to share a notion. And I hope I don't fall flat on my ass here. But I think there is an ambivalence in me creatively, which is this. I come from Nordic countries and I love close ups, okay? From silent era, Carl T.H. Trier, Jeanne d'Arc, all of that. Just looking at the big face on the big screen. You can't do that on TV. You can't do it in theater. To me, that's a part of the possibility of cinema. Cinema can be many things, but to me, the cinematic possibility, Bergman, looking at those people, interrogating the close, intimate proximity that you can't allow yourself in real life. You don't stare at a face like that in real life unless you're a psychopath. In the movies, you can, right?
Right.
So I do a lot of close-ups, and I also do shot reverse in certain scenes. But there's a shame in me a little bit. Shot reverse, oh no, it's bad. You know what? Depends on how it's cut. We don't cut to the line of dialogue. We cut to the listener. We jump out into the objective late in the scene to give a bigger perspective and thematic linking. In this case, Sentimental Value with a house, for example, the reminder of how time moves and how people come and go. And, so mise-en-scène can still encapsulate close-ups, hopefully in an interesting cinematic way, if you're cautious about them and care about them. And also I shoot on the eye line a lot because I want people to get really close to the character. So if I do an over shoulder, I don't do it 2/3 unless that's the point. So there's a whole mechanism of how to do shot reverse in different variations. Okay. So that is my thing also. But then I do a lot of scenes that are not about dialogue and movements, and I like running and physicality and space. And I try to counter it so that the film is a full meal. I hate the idea to make a chamber drama, but every time there are these moments where I really love dialogue and I want to get in there and I want to see the behavior of people using speech as we do and the difficulty grappling with avoidances and intimacy and all that stuff. So I have this ambivalence, and I think my films are about that. So yes, I like silences, but I also like dialogue, and it's a play between. Hopefully, that works out.
Tell me quickly, tell everybody listening what a chamber drama is.
Yeah, so chamber drama to me is like when I say to friends who are not cinephiles, "Oh, I made a family film." I know that like 30% of their brain is worrying that it's going to be people sitting around a kitchen table talking about their problems. And that's not what I want to make at all. I have this I'm what I'm aiming for, and it doesn't. I don't want to come off as bragging. It's up to everyone else to feel how they, am I making this work or not? But I'm interested in taking everyday situations and trying to load them with bigger philosophical questions about time and memory and identity, but letting it start out subtly with human, relatable situations, family life, parents and children, stuff like that. But to pitch that when you're competing with science fiction movies and stuff, I understand that could sound terribly boring, but my job is to try to elevate that and make it emotionally engaging on a bigger scale.
You wrote the part of Nora for Renata, and you wrote the part of her father for Stellan. Now you'd worked with Renata before, obviously, in Worst Person in the World, which got you an Oscar nomination, and she's dazzling in that movie, just dazzling. And so you wrote it for her. That was comforting you. That I'm sure helped the writing process along with you and
Absolutely.
Esco. But you didn't know Stellan. You're writing it for a guy you have no real connection to, other than you're a successful filmmaker, and you can probably
Yeah.
get his agent on the phone. But you wrote it for him, even though you'd never met him. How'd you get him?
Yeah. Well, I realized sort of halfway through the writing process that I needed him deeply. I went and I flew to Stockholm. He invited me for lunch. He's a polite man. He was aware of my movies. We had a lot of honest personal conversations about life and movies and all kinds of things. And it I was lucky. He'd seen my stuff and felt connected somehow to my previous work. And then I pitched the film. I explained it rather. I hate the word pitching because it sounds like it's an elevator thing. We had a proper conversation about what I wanted to talk about. And the more he responded, the more I realized that I could not do the film without him. So at the end of the lunch, I was so desperate that I said something. I used an American term, which is so silly. I said, "Man, if you don't do this, I'm up shit creek." And he laughed. You don't say that in Norwegian. And he laughed and said, it's not a good place to be, is it? So I'll take this serious, and I had a feeling that he would accept. Yeah.
Could I just say what I'm sure a number of people listening will think too is that it was adorable because it's Schitt's Creek. It's possessive, and you said Shit Creek, so it's great that you also got it slightly.
Really? You're teaching me
Yeah.
English here. I love it. No,
Yeah.
we speak Norwegian and Swedish and stuff together. It's very similar. Yeah. So my English is far from perfect. So it's
No,
Schitt's
it's true.
Creek.
That was
I
Schitt's
got
Creek.
it.
You have Schitt's
Oh,
Creek. Yeah, yeah.
good, man.
I
Good.
mean, I don't. That's how I
No,
heard it.
you're absolutely probably right there. That's funny.
You mentioned Anders Danielson Lee, who's in this movie. He plays Nora, the older sister. That's Renata, like her love interest, sort of her romantic liaison in the movie. And he's been a featured character in 3 of your other films, so a more substantive part, although this part matters in this movie. He's sensational. But he also came up with the jazz take that you love. And
Yeah.
I just, as a manner of directing, and I know that you're a planner, you don't like chaos on the set, you're a planner, but he has got you what he called the jazz take because he's a musician. This guy, by the way, he's a musician. He's also a doctor. Like he
Right.
practices, he's a working actor, he's in movies all the time. And then when he's not a movie, he goes back to Norway where he's a GP and sees
Yeah,
patients.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
insane, this guy. Anyway, what's a jazz take?
Yeah, yeah, no, Anders is remarkable. He's just I feel in a way together we trained making movies. He's one of my really close collaborators, and as an actor, he's a great planner, but then he goes unhinged and really explores freely. And I try not to get in the way and just support that process. So he came up with this term jazz take because he's a musician. What he meant was that we know what the scene is. It's not free improvisation at all, but that when we kind of nailed a couple of good takes or a few, you try a looser take where you take a risk. You maybe say something that's subtextual, or you leave some text out, or you have this thing that you want to take and challenge the other player into a different corner and see what comes out of that. It's like a jazz band. You jam together and maybe go off on a weird solo within the tune that you come back to, you know? So I like that metaphor.
Yeah, and he did it, and he does it. I imagine it's happened a lot, but specifically as in your film Oslo, August 31st, there's a great moment, a conversation with him and a friend where he's a drug addict, Anders is, and recovering, and a friend is telling him that everything's going to be okay, and then he in the jazz take, he was like, "Yeah, I don't remember exactly what he says, but basically, no, it won't."
Yeah,
Right?
he says,
Yeah,
"It's all gonna be fine," kind of half ironic, and then he
yeah,
breaks down and he says, "No, it won't," like,
no,
for
it won't.
real.
And then he laughs
And he
even like,
laughs his way out
yeah,
of it because he can't stand
yeah,
the shame of being that person in pain in front of others, which I think is a very moving and a very good instinct for him as an actor. He's, a music turn to be in the pocket. I think that's where we try to get the actors and where they go, like him and Renat and Stellan and Elle and Inga and all of them. It's like really getting into zone when I say cut, and we look at each other and we're like, and they say, "What was that?" I say, "I don't know, but it's interesting."
right. It was
That's where you
interesting.
want to get.
All right, hold all those thoughts. We got to take a quick break, but more with Joachim Trier when we come back. So growing up in Oslo, and you said you grew up in a filmmaking family. So let's talk about like when, and how did you start getting interested uh, in movies? Like when do you start seeing movies? What do you see, and what's influencing you?
Oh, so much, man. My family loves movies. That's the biggest privilege in my life is that I was brought on set. I was listening to grown-ups admire other movies. I was taken to the movies a lot. I
And were you
remember
quiet? Were you a quiet kid? Were you listening? Like
I was
were you?
listening, but I was very talkative. And I'm quite extrovert as a person. So I wanted to engage in conversations. So to me as a kid, I remember sitting there thinking, oh, how can I get into this conversation? Like, I need to know more about movies. And that became a part of, like observing and trying to understand what the grown-ups were talking about. So I could engage in those conversations and feeling just the passion around movies. It's a great gift in my life. My parents were very young. My mother was 21 when she had me. I'm the oldest of three siblings, and so equally with my younger brother and sister, of course, they were taken to the movies. But I think also my mom was making documentaries, doing some fiction work, and then later went into journalism. But at that time, she's really eager to make movies herself. She took me to see Johnny Weissmuller Tarzan movies at the Oslo Cinematheque when I was a kid. And also I remember her taking me to see Mon Oncle with Jacques Tati, and then of course all the Disney stuff and being taken to ET at the biggest screening space in
Oh, you would have
Oslo.
been the perfect like age for 18. You were
Yeah,
like
I was
8 years
nine.
old.
I was nine, and I said to my parents, "Please take me back." And we saw ET three times in the theater, and it's the perfect film. So it was a big mixture of once in a while they put a European classic in there or something old. I remember watching Marx Brothers and Charlie Chaplin also, Buster Keaton, but also of course, yeah, the Disney cartoons, and all the regular stuff, but really loving going to the movies.
My father hated ET because he thought it. I remember when, I mean, I'm older than you, so I saw it when I was, 15, and he was like, "Yeah, they broke their rule. Like he couldn't get home, and then it turns out he can fly. Why don't you just fly home?" Like my dad, who grew
Really?
up, he grew up the son of Herman Mankiewicz, Citizen Kane, but
I
wrote
know.
Citizen Kane. So like, but he was my dad. He was the best father, and he was great. He was awesome in every way. But I just remember his sort of nonsense. He could fly. They didn't tell us. They lied. I felt
I
ripped
think
off.
no, but I mean that's a good point if you're thinking like I guess the counter argument would be, well, Spielberg seduced us to not think about that. We just wept and thought he was marvelous.
Yeah, I don't know that he could fly all the way in space back.
No, no, I think, and also, isn't there something about ET can make a boy fly? Maybe he could do it for
Yeah,
others.
I'm sure it holds. It was just a peculiar
No, no, it's
response
beautiful.
from
But I
adults
will say
to
something
children
about
about this
ET.
movie. Yeah.
But there's something about ET now that I have very young children. They're too young to see it yet. It's one of the things I look the most forward to is really showing them ET because on a deeper psychological level, and I think cinema speaks to us in a different language or on a subconscious level. That's what I love about movies. in ways that we're not able to put into words. And it speaks to us about separation anxiety and mortality in a strange way, because as a child, you accept the comfort of E.T. re-engaging with his parents and going back home, which is kind of, you get it. He needs to do that. At the same time, for Elliot, he's losing his best friend, and maybe they'll
Yeah.
never see each other again. And that is an incredible task to make a real film about that for young children.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I showed my daughter ET at 8. It was a huge fight, huge argument, one of our biggest argument we've ever had. And and then when ET dies halfway through, spoiler, he comes back. She was inconsolable, and she knew she wanted the story ahead of time, so she knew it happened. She knew he died, and knew he came back, and it's still I couldn't reach her. I couldn't reach her, so I blew it a little bit. You can't do it too early. You can't force it, even though you so badly want to force it. Who's your grandfather?
Eric Löken, Norwegian director, jazz musician. He was captured during the Second World War, where he was very young. He was 19 when he was put in a work camp because he was in resistance.
He was in the resistance.
In resistance against the Nazi-occupied Norway at the time. Norway suffered tremendously during the Second World War, and he managed to survive that miraculously. And he, after the war, I think he became a jazz musician in order to try to find a way of coping with life. He was terribly traumatized. And then he was a big film fan, and there was no real infrastructure for movies in Norway at the time. But he managed to make a wonderful film called The Hunt in 1959. I went to Cannes, main competition 1960. And there we had my grandfather making a very personal movie that he called jazz movie. The improvisational, cutting around, kind of doing meta narratives. And the French said, this is Nouvelle Vague. And he had no clue what that meant. He was very interested in the new novel of the 50s in France. And he was embraced, and he came back to Norway, and no one gave a damn. And he just made another couple of films in his life and really worked politically to try to create an infrastructure for movies to be made in the country I come from. And I'm very grateful for that. And I feel, I don't know, I grew up, I mean, we're getting a bit psychological here, so forgive me, but I think I grew up in a family where there was a big story, in a way, about a kind of a talent and a promise that was never fulfilled. And
From him. From him.
yeah, for him, yeah. And then me being the grandson, and also realizing how the war had affected him, and how that grief of a very traumatized man and the necessity for the next generations to kind of fulfill something subconsciously has also affected why I made Sentimental Value and my life tremendously.
Yeah, Sentimental Value has all this generational trauma. I mean, that's sort of and that it's funny because coming here in America, that almost feels like I'm hesitant to even use that phrase because it feels like I'm trying to sound woke, which I don't even mind it, but that word has now become so. But it's really great, and it is. But it is generational trauma, and it's
It is. No. Don't be ashamed of saying that. I think that's just a way of talking about that feeling that you have to realize that your parents were also children once, and that
That's right.
their experience of being children with their parents affected you. And I think whether you believe in something religious, or you believe in basic psychodynamic, or you believe in genetics, and all of that is coming to that conclusion that you're not an autonomous being in the world. You are affected by your past and your family's past, and that's unavoidable. So I think I don't want to be dogmatic about that, but I think it's something we can all feel in our own interpretative way is true. But it's also interesting because I feel it's the gift and the complication of it that I grew up loving movies. But I also see I was born into a family where the complications of making movies and that battle was quite apparent.
and it's not yeah that your parents. I'm struck by this now with the dog. We had our first kid at the exact same age, by the way, 46 years.
Really? Oh,
Yeah, and but it's not just the realization that your parents were children, but that your parents were adults without you, and they had a whole set of dreams and plans, which changed not entirely because of you, but you're one of the big things that happened. And I think it's Yeah, I never thought about that as a kid until I saw my parents, until I saw their marriage fall apart, and then I saw how messed up they both were in their own ways, and there was so much peculiar behavior that you're like, wait, these are my heroes. What are you what are you doing, right?
Yeah. Right.
Um,
Well, thanks for sharing that. And I think that's really relevant to my life and to the movie I just made, actually. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
um, all right, we'll take a quick break. We'll come back with Joachim Trier for the Super 8. All right, so are you ready for the Super 8?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right,
I'm
here we
half
go.
prepared. So it's a bit live. Let's go.
All right. What was your most memorable movie watching experience?
I think we touched a bit on E.T. as a child. It was very remarkable. But I have to say, there's a Norwegian children's movie called Pinchcliffe Grand Prix that my father did the sound on when I was very young. And it's one of the most successful Norwegian films. And it's a animation with dolls, and it's a fantastic film. And I remember going with my dad to see it. It got revived throughout my whole upbringing, and being at the Colosseum, the biggest screen in Oslo at the time when I grew up, and seeing it next to my dad and being like super proud that he'd made the sound. There's a kart race at the end, which is remarkably well made in terms of sound, and that made a great impression on me.
You're the fourth person to say that's their most memorable movie watching experience, that exact film. um, that's yeah, I didn't have that one pegged as a possibility, but that was great. That's a great story. That's right. That's what you remember. I mean, I remember going with my father and brother to see the remake of The Champ with Ricky Schroeder and John Voight, the Wallace Beery movie from the 1930s, and Jackie Cooper, and the remake's terrible. But I went with my father and brother, and it was awesome. Like that whole experience. I remember walking, we were in the balcony. I remember walking up the steps. All these things stand out because I was there with my father and my
I'll tell you another great screening in the context of my father, since that's our subject, it seems. Movie dads. I this summer I took him to see F1 in Copenhagen at the IMAX theater there. And going back to the Pitchcliffe Grand Prix thing, with having mixed what I think is one of the best car races in the world. It's an animation film, so the sound was really important. We watched F1 and we ended up having a long conversation about sound mixing. It has wonderful sound design, this film,
amazing
and
sound.
the Formula One racing scenes, and just and like I'm often seen as this artsy fartsy guy from Europe, but I watch all kinds of movies, and I like action movies. I love good set pieces. I go to the movies to feel cinematic lift and you off the seat, and there were some great moments in there, and watching it with my dad meant a lot. It kind of bookended a bit of that childhood experience of the previous film I mentioned.
It's a nice story. I'm glad you got to do that. You had to get a tattoo of a movie line. What would it be?
Yeah, so I'm not a big tattoo guy, but I thought about
Just one second. Hold on. Yeah, it can be a bumper sticker or a throw pillow.
yeah, no,
That
but I got one. I thought about
one.
one, actually. La Di Da from Annie Hall.
Oh, God, Annie. Well, oh well. La-di-da, la-di-da, la-la, yeah.
I love Annie Hall. I love those movies. I love Diane Keaton. I'm so sad we don't have her around anymore. I always looked out for a new film with Diane Keaton in it. And yeah, so I
I
think La Di
imagine.
Da. And I think it says something about an approach to life.
Yeah, I imagine. Woody Allen movies obviously had an impact on you. They can't not.
Absolutely. Of course they did. Yeah.
Is there a movie you'd show a date, someone you were interested in that you'd want to sort of impress them and you want to win them over? What's that movie? Or maybe a movie you truly like?
I did made a terrible mistake as a young man trying to be cool and taking someone at ICA in London when I studied there to see Salò by Pasolini, and it was the worst date in my life. So I've become smarter since then. We had to leave. Honestly, she looked at me. She's like, "This is terrible." I was like, "No, it's philosophical. You have to read Georges Bataille," and she's like, "Fuck you." And yeah, I still think it's a good film, but I also respect that she felt it was a bit weird. So I learned since then. But I still, my wife actually, one of the first films we saw together, I felt like we have to see a Tarkovsky film because he means the world to me. It's like the mystery of the films we make. I can't figure out why they're so great. I can argue for hours about why they're great, but at the core of it, it's just like a special way of making movies.
Which one was it? Was it
So we
Mirror?
saw Solaris, and I could mention a lot of the others being my favorites and all that. we saw it, and she was very emotionally moved by it, and we had a deep
That tells you
conversation
something
about.
about her, right? Right? That told you something that you liked about her.
Yeah, it did. It did. Yeah. No, she connected to the cinematic quality of that, and the way that he looks at the world, and that, yeah, made me love her even more.
Is there a movie villain who you secretly relate to or think has
It's funny
been
because I mean, it's no secret that I was sent these yesterday. So I had last night to think a little bit, and I was a little bit nervous, and I thought, I spoke to Eskil because I met my co-writer and we talked, and he gave me this. So I'll give credit,
Yeah.
and I completely agree. Notorious Claude Rains. That
Oh, yeah.
character is one of the most beautifully sad villains of all of cinema. Hitchcock had great villains. Generally there was always this seedy psychological dynamic to the human evil that he kind of portrayed so brilliantly, that great master. But I think that Claude Rains and his relationship to his mother, and the ending when he just loves Ingrid Bergman. Poor guy.
I I'd get in trouble now because I can't move the camera. But there's a Notorious poster right there.
Really?
Right. Yeah, right there.
Oh,
And
good.
it's in French. I can barely say a word of French, but and I just think that's also, to me, in some ways, it's Hitchcock. I can make an argument it's Hitchcock's best movie. I mean, because there's that moment, that suspense when Cary Grant carries Ingrid Bergman down the steps and Claude Rains' mother are down there. Nobody has a gun, right? Nobody has a weapon. It's just, are they going to say anything? Right?
Yeah.
Are they going to speak? And they know what they have, what is at risk for them if they do speak, if they stop them.
You need any antibiotics?
No, we can handle her.
Where are you taking her?
You answer that one, Sebastian.
To the hospital. Alex, talk to them quick.
That is good stuff. That is thrilling.
And that whole group, the the expat Nazis with "Welcome, this is my friend Emil," like that whole crowd, which consists of great actors from Germany, and many of them, great silent era types that were coming out to Hollywood. And, it's just that whole film is also like cinema history in a strange way, through that genre. Kind of take on it. No, I love it. And then Claude Rains walking back into the house.
Yeah, totally right. But we know him, right? He's never coming out again. That's
Yeah,
great.
you have all kinds of getting rid of villains. They fight on an edge of a cliff and fall down and scream and all that. But this is a great ending for a villain. I thought very, very
It is
tragic.
great. And you are sympathetic to him. Totally. That's
Yeah,
right.
of course.
Vast warehouse where all movie props are, where all movie costumes are. You're a thief. You break in. What do you take?
I think, to give a bit of homage to my childhood appreciation of Monsieur Hulot, the Jacques Tati character, his pipe, Tati's pipe, because it kind of goes through all the films and it's a characteristic, and the pipe is used comically, dramatically. I mean, I think that pipe would be kind of awesome to have.
Yeah, that's a good call. That's another. I knew there were going to be some. I knew there were going to be some European films in your answers. What's your mother's favorite? Here we go. Probably with this too. What's your mother's favorite movie?
It's Amarcord by Fellini, for
Yeah,
sure,
okay.
and it's become one of my favorites as well.
Did you go to theater? Like, how would you? What? I guess. Well, you were.
Cinematheque, and this was before VHS, and then finally, I think it was like a late night Swedish TV. They would show art movies and Buñuel and Fellini and Truffaut, and you would record it on VHS when you could, and that kind of thing, and sometimes Norwegian TV too. The Swedish were kind of more cineasts, so it's good to have the Swedish channels on your cable.
I'm so provincial and I'm so dumb. Like, I mean, I just the things I was dumb about for so long. I mean, but like you're like on late night Swedish TV, and I instantly think, oh, neat, they had late night TV in Sweden. Like, yeah, of course
Yeah,
they did.
of course. Yeah, no, we were
I
all
mean,
at-
but Americans can really think for a very long time that we're pretty much the only people who have anything cool. And it
No,
turns
but
out
I think
no,
also
we're
I have to
mistaken.
say, the latter half of the 20th century, Europe has been tremendously affected by American culture, and a lot of that is great, and that has to do with cinema and movies and media. Like, a lot of that beautiful stuff that, growing up watching, the stripper working in a factory, but then she dances in front of people at the serious ballet institute, and because she's great, she gets a place there. Or Leroy and Fame, that was obviously everyone that listens understood that was Flashdance. But, also watching the meritocratic Leroy getting into the Fame school and, all of that, like American dynamics of social interactions and class and the meritocratic dream that if you're great at something, you can make it. And all of that affected us as well.
Um, so, what about your father?
It's hard. He loves a lot of movies, and I think one of the greatest collaborations that I saw him have was with Jean Troel. He did Flight of the Eagle. He was on set, and I met the great Jean Troel who did the Immigrants and the New Land. For those who were
Yeah.
interested in Scandinavian cinema, but
Yeah,
but I
well,
also think,
the second one's a sequel to the first, yeah?
yeah, no, exactly, and they're wonderful films. So Jan Troell, obviously, he was very proud to work with him. But I think as watching films, I would say like some George Troy Hill stuff. I remember like Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, The Sting, those films that he was so stoked when we finally got hold of them on VHS and when I was young and watched them together and the music and yeah, I think he loves a lot of films, but I think it's worth mentioning George Roy Hill is a great, great director,
Oh
and
my God, such a great director.
now that we've also lost the fantastic Robert Redford, which is such a sad thing as a director, as a person for creating Sundance, which meant so much to so many of us, and also as an actor. So George Roy Hill, man.
Have you seen Slapshot?
Oh, of course. How could I forget? I
No,
see
I
time
just
and time again. Slapshot. What a great film.
right. I'm a huge sports fan, but I'm not much of a hockey fan. But this is still the best sports movie ever. I just it's so
I
great.
agree.
And
Great, yeah.
okay, so I think this is perfect for. Oh, one more first. A movie that makes you laugh, and a movie that makes you cry consistently.
Yeah, like let's do Laugh first. I think Laugh so much, but I will say Step Brothers, Adam McKay, like Step Brothers, I think is it's not underrated. People love it and it keeps
Oh,
on
there's
living in our
people who love
culture. But it's a film that, oh my God, it's so funny.
Look, I didn't touch a drum set, okay? I witnessed with my eyes your testicles touching my drum set.
All right, that's it. That's it. You two guys leave me no choice. No television for a week.
What?
We are so serious, guys.
You're fucking high! Are you out of your mind?
And I also want to give credit, like Paul Thomas Anderson is one of the best directors around, maybe the best of my generation. And I think that in One Battle After Another, there's so many things I could say about that film, but when Leonardo DiCaprio gets tased, I was fortunate to see it early and in a cinema in Norway with some friends, and we all like laughed out loud. There's a lot of humor in his films.
You got to see it early because you guys traded films. You sent him
we
Sentimental
did.
Value, and he sent you One Battle After Another.
It's true. Yeah.
I texted him last night for a question to ask you, and then not realizing that he had written a whole thing in Variety about you. I know we're like up against it, but I just want to read it. A few years ago, Joachim Trier did the world a favor and introduced us to Renata Reinsve. So when superfans like me heard Joachim and Renata were reuniting, that was for Sentimental Value, there was lots of jumping up and down. Renata's made for the movie's face and talent will take anyone's breath away. I've seen her do things on screen that make my stomach drop and blood pressure rise. She's a gift from movie heaven, and Joachim and his co-writer Eskil Vogt know how to provide her with material worthy of her talent. Yeah, he adores you, and
And I adore him. It's really like to talk craft with him and movies and life. I mean, it's a very, very smart guy and someone with a sense of autonomy about his own voice in cinema, which I admire at the level he's working also with those financial, working with big studio films and making them so personal. It's exactly how I grew up admiring American cinema.
what about a movie that makes you cry? Do you cry? I imagine you cry.
I
You've
a
seen.
lot. Yeah, the older I get, and now I have kids. I don't know about you, but it
Oh,
made
I
me
cry.
very.
I've always cried easily.
Yeah, I always cry too. I always cried, and I'm glad I did. Emotions are tools. No, I have to go European, but I'm going English. Like I studied in the UK, so I pay homage to British cinema. Kess by Ken Loach
Oh yeah,
makes me
sure.
cry
Yeah.
every time. That young boy, working class, late 60s, Britain. No one sees him. He's invisible, and then suddenly a teacher knows that he knows how to train a falcon, I believe it is. I'm not a bird
Yeah,
expert.
I think it's Falcon. Yeah.
Yeah, when he talks about that, and you see the ignition of this little boy who's been silent, and all the passion and knowledge that he can suddenly convey because someone gives him a voice. Yeah, it brings me to tears every time. It's an important film about. It's a humanist film on the deepest level.
Yeah, it's a movie I didn't see for a long time, and it's incredibly powerful. Everybody should see Guess It stays with you. All right, last one, your wild card, perfect for a European. You're on a road trip, but this is a road trip across America, right? You're going from like Castine, Maine to Los Angeles. You're taking this trip driving with a movie character. Who's that movie character? Who's driving across the country for anywhere from like 4 to 9 days with you?
You know what? Yeah. Paul Mazursky, Harry and Tonto.
Yeah. Which one?
Bring a cat across America.
Right. You're taking the cat. Okay. All right.
Yeah, I think the cat in Harry and Tonto. I don't know. And then I can, when you have a cat with you, people will engage in conversation. So I meet a lot of different interesting people, I'm sure. Art Carney, of course, is the man carrying the cat. His character's kind of sweet too.
Get along, little pussy, get along, little pussy, get along, little pussy, get along.
Very sweet. Very sweet. Why you won the Best Actor Oscar. I know we got to let you go. I was going to ask you about a guilty pleasure American action movie, but now I know you like those movies, right? I mean, I sort of had
I
the
do.
sense that maybe that wasn't like, are you very anxious to show your kids when they're old enough? Like what? Like Con Air, Die Hard? Like what's exciting for you to show them?
Yeah, it's a lot of good action movies. I mean, right now I think you got to rethink your cinematic approach through the history of cinema. And I know that someone like Tom Cruise and the way that he runs and makes us feel that it's a physical event,
Yeah.
and all the other stunts, is incredible. It's cinema, it's cinematic.
Joachim Trier, Sentimental Value is phenomenal. It's one of the best movies of the last 5 years. I'm safe avoiding hyperbole. There's no way that's not true. It moved me like nothing else. And thank you for talking to me. And it was great to meet Eskel at that other conversation. Good luck as as getting people to be excited about this movie moves on. But I think good things are in store for you. So
Oh, thank you, my
congrats and
friend.
thanks.
No, I really enjoyed this conversation and talking movies, yeah, no, and your podcast is magnificent. So thanks for having me on it.
That was Joachim Trier. The movie he directed and co-wrote, Sentimental Value, is up for 9 Oscar nominations. Joachim has 2 of them. So I had absolutely nothing to do with that movie. I think everyone knows that. But here's the weird thing about when you like a movie as much as I loved Sentimental Value, and then Oscar season comes along. I felt vaguely responsible for the movie. I certainly felt like I had a vested interest in it. I know that's preposterous, but man, all I cared about, well, I didn't wake up early to watch the Academy Award nominations, but as soon as I was up and remembered that they came out, when I went to look, the thing I cared about by far most, I have a little interest because Paul Thomas Anderson has been so great to TCM. So I was interested in one ballot after another doing well. But what I really cared about, because I just spent this time with Joachim, was that all the actors in Sentimental Value be recognized. And I had this absurd feeling of pride. Again, like I had played some role in the movie's success. I know that's preposterous, but I think, I think that's what it is a little bit to be a movie fan, right? You get protective over the things you love. I hope you got some of that from the spirited conversation that Joachim and I had in the Super 8. I love that we connected on so many movies that he loves Adam McKay films. He loves Step Brothers. I don't think we talked about Anchorman, but I'm fairly certain that even though I suspect he knows very little about local news in America, that Joachim Trier loves Anchorman because he likes Step Brothers so much. And Harry and Tonto, his answer to the road trip question. Oh, and then the thing that because I was afraid to move the camera, I can do it now though. Look here. Okay, this is going to be awkward. So here it goes. Picking this up. There you go. I think I can, look, there it is, right there. There's my Notorious poster right next to my Where Eagles Dare poster is. And there's Darby. You can't hide Darby. How you doing, James? How you doing? Okay, so James, you gotta make sure this looks right when I put it back here.
Okay, I'll do that.
All right. So By the way, a little quick inside baseball story on Where Eagles Dare. So that's a movie I've loved ever since I was a kid. Late 60s movie with, I think 69, with Clint Eastwood and Richard Burton. Got one of the great endings of any war film ever. I won't spoil it. You should see it. I won't spoil it. A great, great ending. And it was more than any war movie ever. It's a movie where you realize that the Germans lost the war because they could not hit anything. All they do is shoot at people's feet the entire movie. Okay, but that's not why it's relevant. I've loved the movie for a long time. I'm walking down the street in my neighborhood in Los Angeles about 12 years ago, 15 years ago, 12. And this guy's having a yard sale, and he's selling the poster from Where Eagles Dare. And he wants $20 for it. And I offer him 10, right? And then he goes, no, it's 20. And I know the guy too. He lives in the neighborhood. And I walk on and I realize, what am I doing? This is one of my favorite movies. The guy was selling a great looking poster of it for $20 and I'm only willing to pay 10. So I went back, paid 20, got the poster. And then it was in the background during COVID in the place I was living. And so I thought it'd be a cool thing to have in the background while I was doing intros from home. But there was an objection that doing an entire 2-minute intro while seeing the swastika on the poster of Where Eagles Dare might be a little distracting for people. And I conceded that, that would probably be a little distracting for people. But again, the Nazis, the bad guys in the movie. Okay, I'd like to think Joachim Trier would have enjoyed that story. That's our show. You can find many of the movies we talked about over on HBO Max. We made a list for you. That is in our show notes. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ben Mankiewicz. See you next time. James Kim produces and edits Talking Pictures. Our supervising producer is Darby Maloney. Video editor is Andrew David Lewis. Dory Stegman is our talent producer. Glenn Matullo mixes each episode. Set design by Raphael Loria and Leanne Reagan Barnes. Angela Carone is the director of podcasts at TCN. The team at HBO Max is executive producer Michael Glugstad, senior producer Allison Cohen-Sorokach, and producer Kenya Reyes. The HBO Max concept and design studio team is made up of Marta Duarte Diaz, Karen Guan, and Kendall Thomas. Production support from Jaco Friedman, Liz Winter, Jean Renault, and Kristen Hassel. Special thanks to Julie Baton. Thanks so much for watching and listening. See you next time.